you said you went there with some of the what would end up being Snarky Puppy guys. Who were the guys
Yeah.
that you went to
Well, it
college
already
with?
was. Yeah, because Snarky Puppy started pretty early on. I actually went to the same freshman orientation as Mike League
Oh,
and several other of the band members. Jay Jennings, Clay Pritchard, who was a sax player with us for a long time. Um, but and yeah, lots of people were like so kind of early on. Mike started having just jam sessions in this ballroom that you could rent out for an hour or two, or not rent, you just sort of designate
yeah.
that you're gonna take it for a couple hours. And we would,
What year of college is this for you? Is this freshman year
it
still?
was my freshman year.
Okay.
Yeah. And we would do, and that was common for a lot of people to do, like, especially if you're someone who's kind of a band leader, you have some arrangements or whatever, like get together and play these arrangements, see what it's like. So he started doing that on a sort of a bigger scale, and eventually that became Snarky Puppy. And but for a long time it was just us, like pretty lame, like white kids trying to play jazz combined with other stuff, because we were very into like D'Angelo and RH Factor and that sort of mixture of hip hop and stuff. But then also Mike was pretty interested in world music early on, so that like Brazilian stuff started to be a part of the band pretty early.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, just a lot of like African diaspora styles of like percussion was definitely a big part of it early on. But we were just like hoping and listening, and we didn't really have any actual connections to any of that stuff until we started to go down to these jam sessions. And I don't really remember exactly like whether we started to go to the jam session, or I think there might have been a connection through like some church gigs that we were playing and we would meet people. So yeah, like the one of the guitar players in the band, Mark Lettieri, he before he was in our band, he was playing around the scene already with a lot of those people. And there's a trumpet player, songwriter, keyboard player named Phil Lassiter,
Of course,
who,
yeah.
yeah,
He used to
he
tour
had,
opening up for you guys, right? At one point.
we've definitely played gigs together. And that's kind of how we met, or at least in my memory, that's how we met Mark. And I played with Phil Lassiter for a bit, and Mike did too. So that started to be a connection there, and starting to go to these jam sessions around the same time. I don't really remember like the exact chronology of that. It's just big
Yeah.
in my brain of them all together.
How do you think at that time the way the band sounded? How do you think it fit in with not? I guess specifically like the college scene, the North Texas scene. Did you think of it as like, oh, we're making this stuff and it sounds totally different than everybody else, or was it just kind of a an amalgamation of stuff of like the other groups that were at the college?
I think in my mind it was just sort of the next step, because hearing them play, and especially like trying, being on the same stage trying to play with musicians of that caliber, it's like like you were saying, like when you first get to college and you're just like, oh, I am the worst person on this stage,
Hmm.
and that's a really good thing. I'm really glad. And so in that situation, it was like I have a degree in jazz and I've gone through all this stuff, and I'm like, it's like in the 1 o'clock lab band, like according to UNT, I'm like really, really good at jazz. And then go to those situations and just feel like a child. Like I do not know how to play one measure that feels good. I think that was the main thing, was feel, just rhythm and good feeling. Playing a groove just doesn't happen in jazz school.
Yep.
So that was the main thing. But I mean, honestly, like also just harmonically, like, the gospel music world has crazy harmony that is related, but is not at all the same thing as the way that it's taught in jazz academia. So that was a big eye opener for me too, trying to think about trying to figure out how to think about harmony and play with good feel. So yeah, I guess it was. I don't know exactly how to describe that in terms of like the way that you posed the question, but for me it was just sort of like, okay, this is the real thing. This is the thing that we've been wanting, and it's right here, and these people are willing to play with us. So
Yeah.
I'm going to take advantage of that.
And what year was it when you graduated college?
2006.
Okay, so that's the same year that the Only Constant came out, I think, right?
I don't know. That's possible. I guess I was thinking it would have been a little bit earlier, but I really don't know. That's
I think
possible.
I can't remember now. Jeez, I should have written that down.
I mean, the internet will know.
Yeah, if if you asked me, I think maybe like when I was in high school, I could have listed probably every detail of a Snarky Puppy album, like with a perfect amount of accuracy. And I think I might be slipping now. So I hope I didn't get that wrong by saying it's
Totally fine.
2006.
You don't need that information.
Hey,
You
it's
can.
fun. It was. Hey, I gotta be honest. Snarky Puppy like was part of the reason that I ended up because like I saw the I think it was the family dinner. Yeah, family dinner two. I saw the premiere in New York City, and it was like kind of I always liked New York, and it was one of those things where I saw the premiere of the movie. Well, not a premiere, but the tour of the movie, and I was
Yeah.
like, it was. I kind of associated that and how much I like the band with New York City. And so I think that's a big part of the reason that I was like, man, I got to come to this city because this is where, big stuff happens.
Yeah.
But
That's cool.
yeah, and so when you guys got started on that first record, whenever year it did come out, I'm not sure. Did you think going in like I would prefer to be the only guitarist, or is it just kind of this natural thing of you and Bob playing together?
It was always pretty natural. I don't. I guess we're both on that record. Is that right?
Yeah,
Right.
according to the information I read, it said it was you and Bob were the only guitarists. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. I mean, I have a terrible memory anyway, but yeah, I have a hard time keeping it all straight because at some point, Mike, or at some point, Bob and Moz moved to New York, um, because they were a couple years older than us, and then shortly after that, Mike did and Justin did. It's just sort of the band kind of gradually moved there. But during the time where Bob moved to New York, but Mike hadn't yet, I was doing more of the Snarky Puppy stuff. But then once Mike moved to New York, he was doing a lot more. Um, but yeah, I think early on during that time, we were both just yeah, we would both just play. It was
Hmm.
always sort of like a just whoever can be there situation. For a very long time, it was just like whoever can show up, let's do it. Then we eventually had to get a little more strict because adulthood things happen.
Uh-huh. Yeah, when I was talking about Moz, he was saying how, especially like early on in the days when the band was touring, that it was kind of this mix of like certain people would go out to the clubs at night and party after shows, like, have fun. Some people were more like the I'm tired, I want to go home. Where do you fall on that spectrum, or where did you back then, and how has it changed now?
I mean, I've always been I'm tired, I'm going to go home.
I'm the
I mean, I
same
try
person.
to. I mean, yeah, I try to. I do like tend to make a decent amount of the hang, but like, yeah, I'm definitely not the one who's up all night. I'm like, all right, this has been good. I'm gonna go now. But I do think like in a way that was a little bit of the like the weird mixture of elements that worked very well to make Snarky Puppy successful was that that we had so many people in the band because it seems like that would be like a real problem for touring, and I'm sure Mike would say it was a real problem for touring. But the plus side of that is that like for years, we were playing gigs, just sleeping on people's couches and like playing in random college bars or whatever, literally anything that we could get, we would say yes to. And in those situations, like you never know who you're going to meet, and it works to your benefit to have this like huge range of personable individuals in the band because maybe some random person doesn't respond to one person in the band, but they love someone else and they have like the greatest night of their life hanging out with that person in the band. And then they remember you like 6 months later when you come through town and you're looking for a place to sleep or a venue. Can you get me in touch with a band that we can join up, a local band we can play with or whatever? Like you make these connections that you don't necessarily see that from the outside, but it's such an important part of growing a band is just making those connections
Do you
from
remember
the.
any particularly miserable nights having to sleep in someone's house early on?
I mean, I don't really remember anything being miserable. Like we were young enough to just look at it all as like fun.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there was one where someone had like a fox for a pet, and I remember like I was sleeping on a sleeping bag on the ground, and I woke up and like saw like I didn't know that they had it, and I was like, what the that's a fox. So that was pretty weird, but yeah. No, I mean, like, yeah, I never really remember it being miserable. Although I will say that I did, compared to people like Maz, I definitely didn't go on nearly as many of the tours. Like I was always kind of doing like my rock band on the side. So I would, Bob did more of the touring compared to me. So yeah, maybe they thought it was miserable at some point. It's definitely
Yeah.
possible.